Hello, welcome back to this 3-minute repertoire course, and as I said in the introduction, we're gonna see some of the lines that are in the course, and of course the full course is much more complete and it has all the lines, and here we will see about let's say 10-50% of the whole course. So let's get into the lines. After e4, e5, here in the full course we will see some of their moves like d4 or knight c3, bishop c4, and here we're gonna see the king's gambit with f4, and then we will start with the main lines after knight f3. So let's start with the king's gambit after 2f4. Here the main move is e takes f4, but I'm gonna recommend the move d5, that it is also played at the highest level, and in my opinion is much more simple than the lines with e takes f4, and it's equally a very good line. So this is why I recommend this move. And after e takes d5, that practically is forced. After knight f3, e takes f4, e takes d5, we are going to transpose to the main line, that it is the same. And of course f takes e5 is not possible because of queen h4. So e takes d5 is the main move. We're going to take on f4, threatening queen h4, so knight f3 is the only move, and we play knight f6. Here in the full course we'll see other lines. Here we're just gonna analyze the move bishop c4, but I think you can see that our plan with black is much more simple than in other complicated line in the king's gambit. We're just gonna take on d5, try to play bishop e7, short castle, and our position is gonna be very normal and very good. So let's take a look at bishop c4, that it is one of the main moves. We just take on d5, short castle, and here instead of bishop e7, that will be also normal, we're gonna play bishop e6. That is a very smart move. It's a very smart move because of course we avoid some rook e1 ideas, but main idea is that we are threatening knight e3, attacking the queen and taking the bishop on c4. Also, of course, we protect the d5, that is a very important square, and at some point we can, as we're gonna see in this line, to play with a knight c6, moving the queen, and some long castle ideas. Here white has some moves, but for example if d4, knight e3, with the idea of taking on c4 is practically winning, and this is one of the tricks of this line. So let's say one of the most dangerous moves, that is bishop b3, with the idea of c4 and d4. Here is one of the lines which we need to be a bit careful, and we're going to play with knight c6, with the idea that after d4 we have the move queen f6, that it makes a lot of sense. We defend f4, we put pressure on d4, and we prepare the idea long castle, putting the rook on d8, looking at that queen on d1. And basically the only forced line, that it is c4, works for us. So if white play other move, we're gonna have a very simple development. So let's take a look at this line with c4, that after the one we're gonna get a clear advantage. We're gonna play knight e3 and getting rid of this important bishop on c1. After bishop e3, f takes c3, we see that all black squares are very weak. The d4 pawn, the b2 pawn, we're gonna see that after some d5 that pawn is very weak. So basically white needs to do something concrete. The only try is to play d5, attacking our bishop and the knight, but we have very strong move taking on b2. The rook is practically hanging, and after this we're gonna get a very good position. Also e2 is a threat. Anyway, let's continue a bit more. White takes on e6, threatening queen d7, so we need to take. Here we already have 3 pawns for the piece, but it is not just that. We have all these threats that are still there. The rook on a1, this e2 idea, and actually white has here just an only move to defend from these both threats, that it's not easy at all. That is the move queen c2, with the idea that we cannot take because of knight c3, and our queen would be trapped on a1. So we need to take on c2, but this endgame is clearly better for us. we have 3 pawns, and we have very good control of the dark squares thanks to this bishop. Anyway, I think it's not clear to see this, so I'm gonna offer the proposal of the computer in this position, that so we can understand better this endgame. The best move is g5, threatening bishop g7, just winning the rook, avoiding knight c3 because bishop g7 would be winning anyway, and also our idea is gonna force this knight to move from f3, even if we give this pawn, because the d4 square for this knight is gonna be very, very good, because it would help us to push e2. So actually white has here practically only moves to not lose: a3 to give the a2 square for the rook, and after that we can play long castle with the idea of g4. White needs to take the pawn on g5. After that we get the d4 square, knight d4, threatening the bishop. Bishop e4 is practically the only move. We play e2, rook e1, bishop c5, threatening any check winning like knight c2 or knight f3, so king h1 is the only move. And after that we play bishop b6. There is no way white can stop bishop a5, and we're gonna get some material back with clear advantage. So this is practically, I would say, the only complicated line for black in this line that practically give us almost a winning position, and the rest are you of course have them in the full course, but you will see that they are much more simple, and definitely I really like this d5 idea, and it takes f4 against the king's gambit. So let's go now to some main lines. After knight f3 we're gonna play knight c6, and here let's take a look at some possibilities. Bishop c4, knight c3, some d4 too, and of course the main line with bishop b5. Let's start with bishop c4. I'm gonna recommend the move bishop c5 that I've played a lot, and I'm much more familiar with this move than with knight f6. Of course both are possible here, knight f6, but as I said, I've played a lot bishop c5, and I prefer this move. Here c3 is the main move. We will see as always some secondary moves in the full course. For example, b4 that we can see an example here. We're gonna take the pawn after c3. Here there are some moves with white. Bishop d6 is possible, bishop a5, but I'm gonna recommend bishop e7. That practically is the move that top players are playing lately, because basically the position we get with black is easier, and we don't need to play these scary lines after bishop a5 or bishop d6, in which we get a pawn up, but we need to defend because white has a lot of initiative. After bishop e7, the idea is many times give the pawn back, give the pawn on e5, but to develop our pieces very quickly, and thanks to that we're gonna have a very good position. So after d4, controlling the center, we're gonna play knight a5. This is the key move of this idea with bishop e7. We're gonna get rid of this bishop that is the most important piece for white. And here in the full course we will see the main lines with bishop d3, bishop d2, that after d6 we just give the pawn back and black is perfectly fine. And here in this 3-minute repertoire course we're gonna see one scary move that it's bad, but we need to see that it is the move bishop takes f7. That definitely seems scary. Knight ac5 is coming, queen h5 is coming after, but we don't need to worry because black is perfectly fine. We're gonna take the bishop, knight ac5. Here both moves are actually good, king f8 or king e8, but in my opinion king e8 is even easier because the only try is queen h5. After that we just play g6. White needs to take on g6, or we will just play d6 with a good position. And after knight f6 we just manage to move the rook after, and we get a piece up. Of course if white takes the knight on e5, we just take the knight on g6. So the only try and the best try is queen h4. After that we just move the rook, white needs to take on e7, we take, and basically there is not enough compensation for the piece. For example, e5, knight d5, and white has 2 pawns, but actually we have very good control of the white squares. These knights have very good squares on d5 and c4. Against check we can play queen f7, and then we're gonna play d6, and this bishop is gonna control all the white squares again. So definitely there is not enough compensation here for white. So we've seen the Evans Gambit here with b4, and let's take a look at some main lines after c3. We're gonna play knight f6, and here we can see d3 or d4, the 2 main moves. D3 is of course more solid, and d4 definitely is more aggressive, and there are more concrete lines that we need to know. Let's start with d3. We're gonna play d6, castle, and we're gonna play a5. This is the move I'm gonna recommend in the course. The idea is to avoid some expansion with b4, and we're gonna guard the bishop on a7 after, and basically against any plan with white we're gonna play the same way. We're gonna play castle, we're gonna play bishop e6 next, trying to exchange those bishops, and after that white needs to make a choice, exchanging the bishop or playing with bishop b5. In both cases we're gonna be perfectly fine. Of course, once again in the course there will be more lines analyzed, but here we can see an example with rook e1. We continue playing with castle. Here there are 2 lines, h3 or knight pd2. We can see a bit of them. Practically the white's plan is always the same, to bring the knight to g3 and push d4 later, and they can do it with h3 or without h3. So let's see first what happens if white tries to play the plan without h3. We're gonna play bishop a7, knight f1, and bishop e6. As I said, this is the plan we're gonna play against basically any line. We will see it just later now against h3. And here white needs to make a choice. Bishop b5, I would say it's the main idea, and the other one is to take on e6. Here in this 3-minute repertoire course we're gonna just see this move, bishop takes e6, and after f takes e6 we get this position. We have double pawns here on the e file, but we have very good counterplay on the f file now, because this line is open for this rook, and it coordinates very well with this bishop on a7, and also with this knight on f6 that can get the f4 square at some point. So let's check knight d3. There are other moves that we will see in the forecourse. Knight d3 is one of them, avoiding our ideas with knight h5. And now a very important move, we're going to play a4, winning space on the queen side, taking the b3 square from white's queen. And we're going to see in the future that we're going to have some a3 ideas, not now because white would play before, but if the center is open after some d5 or after some d4, then c3 can be weak after this a3 idea. So very important to play a4 here. A normal move for white is h3, and after that we are just gonna play h6. It's always an useful move, getting rid of some ideas with knight g5 mainly, but also bishop g5. So h6 is always useful. And after bishop e3, the normal move, we're gonna take, and d5. We break in the center, and we're gonna see now what I just mentioned before, these a3 ideas after the center is open. So we can see already here that for example, after e takes d5, that we will see in the course, we will take with the knight, and then a3 will be very strong. So let's take a look at rook e1. That is the other possibility. We're gonna play d4, winning a space and closing the e file, so this rook cannot attack our pawns. And after that we have very good control of the queen side with these pawns in the 4th rank, and definitely black is perfectly fine. Rook c1 makes a lot of sense. white can take on d4, but we would get the same position after rook c1, knight d7, white takes on d4, that is the normal move, takes, and this position is already good for us. White doesn't have an easy plan. We can just continue with queen e7, improving our queen. This queen can go maybe to b4, threatening the b2 pawn and protecting all our pawns. Also, we have the e5 square for one of these knights. Also, some ideas with rook a5, controlling more this e5 square, and maybe some rook b5 ideas with that queen on b4. And for white, it's difficult to propose a plan. For example, we can see the move knight e2, that seems really good, attacking d4. And if we play e5, then we don't have that square for the knight, and also the knight can go back to g3, and the f5 square would be a very good square for the knight. So we are not going to play e5. We're going to play here a thematical sacrifice that we need to know in these positions, that it is rook takes f3. We give the rook for this knight, but we destroy white structure, and the knights are going to be very powerful, especially against these rooks that they don't have good files to attack. The rook on c1 is more useful, of course, still not so much because this knight on c6 is defending everything, but definitely the rook on e1 is not really a good piece. So after g takes f3, we can give a check on g5. If white plays king h2 or knight d3, we can just put a knight on e5. So best try is king h1, and we can just play queen h5, attacking h3 and f3. White is forced to play knight d1, and we can just play rook f8 with a very good position. We have very good control of the king side. We control the f4 square, we control the e5 square, and then definitely all our pieces are very well located. If we get one knight on e5 and the other to f4, probably the game is over because this knight would mate on g2. So definitely black is better here. White's rook doesn't have, they don't have any purpose in this position. So here is this. This is a good example of this position after bishop takes e6. That is one of the normal lines, and I think we've appreciated this counterplay on the f-file with that rook takes f3 at the end. So let's now see what happens if white plays with h3. That is the one of the normal lines. We're going to play bishop a7 anyway, knight bd2, and bishop e6. As I said, good thing about this plan against the Italian is that it works for practically against any move order, and the positions are more or less similar. Now we're going to see a bishop b5 that it's a bit different, but for example, if white takes on e6, the position is very similar to what we just saw. So let's take a look at the other main line with bishop b5, and now we're going to play knight e7 with the idea of putting the knight on g6, that it's very good square for this knight, and pushing c6 and d5 at some point. Here white has two ideas: to play d4 immediately or to play knight f1, preparing d4, putting the knight on g3 first. Let's take a look at this plan first, knight f1, and then we will see the move d4. We're going to play knight g6, knight g3, and here usually in this position, if white gets to d4 with the knight on g3, usually white is a bit better, but we get to break first in the center after c6, bishop a4, we have the move d5, and the key of this position is that white cannot take the pawn on e5, as we're gonna see. So practically we've arrived first to break in the center, and that gives us a better position. E takes d5 is the normal move, knight takes d5, and now, as I said, if white takes on e5, we can take, and bishop f2, and we are winning thanks to the idea that after king takes f2, queen f6 check, winning the rook on e5. So white cannot take on e5 here in this position, so they can play d4, that seems a good move. After e takes d4, knight takes d4, it seems that knight takes e6 is a big threat, but actually it is not, and after queen c7, black is just better, thanks that knight ac6 is not possible. And for example, if you get the full course in the model games, you will see that this is a game against Duda and Magnus Carlsen that you can see analyzed there. And in that game, Duda didn't take on e6, but we can see what happened if white does it. After knight takes e6, we have bishop takes f2 check first, king takes, we take on e6 now, and now after king g1, we take on g3, getting the piece back, winning a pawn, and of course it's this. Not just that, we are threatening some knight h4 ideas, knight f4, rook f2, and black is totally winning. So this is what happens if white tries the plan with knight g3. We get first to break in the center, and now let's take a look at the other option that white plays d4 immediately. We're gonna just play knight g6, defending e5, and the thing is that now it's not so easy for white to get the knight into g3. We will see in the course what happens if white plays knight f1. Here we're gonna see the move bishop d3, that is the other option, protecting e4 and preparing that plan. And now we're gonna play a very strong idea that I really like, that is knight h5, with the idea of getting the knight to f4. Bishop c2 is the normal move because the white will need to go there sooner or later. We can mention that knight ac5, that is a very normal move after knight h5, and that we really need to have in mind when we play knight h5, because we can just blunder a pawn with this. Here now it's not working because we will play knight gf4, defending the knight, attacking this knight and attacking this bishop, and we win the game. So knight ac5 is not working. So as I said, white plays bishop c2, and we play knight f4, that is a very good square for this knight. Cannot be attacked with g3 because always h3 is hanging, so practically there is no way to get rid of this knight. And also, as we're gonna see, it's important because now the f pawn is liberated and we have a very strong idea. So white continues the normal plan with knight f1, and we're gonna play queen d7. That is a very important move because we are threatening very strong sacrifices with bishop h3 or knight g2 check, knight g2 and then bishop takes h3 check, followed by queen g4. For example, if white plays d takes e5, knight takes g2 is just destroying with this idea, bishop takes h3, also f2 with this bishop, and then queen g4, and black is completely winning. And we can take a look at two other moves that make a lot of sense, that it is knight g5 or knight e3. For example, knight g5 seems very normal, defending h3 and trying to get the bishop, but actually it's not a good move. After h6, knight e6, f e6, now we see the power of the f file. It seems that black's attacks is not that strong, but we are threatening a very important move, that is e takes d4, c takes d4, and e5, that open this diagonal for this bishop and this diagonal for this queen, and all of this make that black's attack is very strong, because after e takes d4 and e5, then many ideas as knight takes h3, as knight h4 now makes much more sense with after including the queen and the bishop in the attack. So this knight g5 that seems very strong, actually it's a mistake, and the best move is knight e3, and after that we're gonna see the plan I mentioned before. After e takes d4, here knight takes d4, if c takes d4 is the same plan that we are gonna see now. After it's the same plan, so let's say bishop knight takes d4, we're gonna take with the bishop here on d4, and after c takes d4, if queen takes d4, we can just play rook e8, and knight h4 is gonna be a very strong threat with all these ideas in mind, so white needs to take on d4. And now the plan I mentioned, and I wanted to show it before, thanks to the knight on f4, we can play d5, and now e5 is not threatening our knight on f6, so we can have this idea with f6 many times. So we are gonna play knight h4 first, but here our next move is not even sacrifice anything, is to play f6 first, open the f file, and once we've opened the f file, then all these sacrifices are gonna be stronger. We're gonna just take on e5, and then, for example, some bishop h3, or after that knight h3 and f2 would be hanging. Definitely, we have many ideas here, and the thing is that it is not easy for white to bring pieces into the defense, because this knight doesn't have a good square, so this bishop cannot attack the knight on f4. This queen cannot go to e2, cannot go to f3, cannot go to g4, cannot go to h5. So definitely this position is just winning for black. So yeah, here we've seen one of these plans. I want to repeat it because maybe I want very quickly, but once we have the knight on f4, this idea with e takes d4 and d5 followed by f6, it's much more stronger. So here we've seen some of the lines that we will see in this Italian with c3 and d3. In the full course, once again, we will have much more lines analyzed with this plan of bishop e7 and bishop e6. And now we can take a look at d4. That is a very important line that we need to know. Here we're gonna see just some lines, but in the full course is much more analyzed, and you will have everything there. So we're gonna take on d4. Here, for example, c d4 is a very important line that we will need to know, but here we're just gonna see the main move with e5. We're gonna play d5, and here bishop b5 and bishop b2 are the two possible moves. Bishop b5 is the main move, but let's take a look at bishop b2 first. That practically the position is very similar, but in my opinion, and also it is why people play bishop b5 more, the bishop on b5, pinning the knight and preparing to take on c6 is better than on e2, but still let's see this move. We're gonna play knight e4, a very good square for this knight, c takes d4, bishop b6, and practically in this position we're always gonna follow the same plan. We're gonna try to pressure the d4 pawn with the idea of bishop g4, trying to get rid of this knight, and also after castle the move f6, breaking in the center, putting pressure on e5 too, and also trying to open the file to put more pressure on f3. So this is our plan, and basically for white is very difficult to avoid it. Knight c3 is the normal development. We're gonna play castle. White plays castle, and we'll continue the plan I mentioned with bishop g4, bishop e3 is forced, defending d4, and now f6, and there is no way white can hold the center, so they need to take on f6, and after knight takes f6, now without the pawn on e5, we have some squares for our pieces that we didn't have before. The queen can go to d6, the rook can go to e8, and definitely without the pawn on e5 we are perfectly fine. We can see an example, for example h3, we're gonna play bishop h5 because we don't have enough pressure on d4, so it doesn't make sense to take on f3 now. And basically we are gonna follow the plan of queen d6 and rook e8, and if we have a good control of the e5 square, usually we're perfectly fine. So we can see what happens if white tries to play some rook e1 with the idea of putting the knight on e5 quickly. For example, if rook c1, queen d6, we're gonna continue with rook e8, and it's not clear the plan for white. So let's say this plan with rook e1, we play queen d6, and now white plays knight e5. Bishop takes h5 is a threat, so we cannot take on e5, we are going to take on e2, and after rook takes e2, we cannot take on e5 because after d takes e5 we would lose a piece. After queen takes e5, white would take on b6, attacking our queen. So we cannot take on e5, and it seems that white can hold this knight on e5 with f4, but we're going to see that if they try that, it's going to be very good for us, and we're going to win the game almost immediately. We're going to play in rook e8, putting more pressure on e5. Now we are threatening knight takes e5. So practically f4 is the only try to support that knight. We're gonna say it's a bad move, so probably the best is just to take on c6, but after that we are perfectly fine because all our pieces are in good squares, and this knight on c3 and the bishop on e3 are not very good pieces. So we don't need to worry about those. And after f4 we have a very strong move, knight h5, putting pressure on f4, and there is not an easy way for white to protect it. g3 is not possible, queen f1 is not possible because we take on d4, so practically the only move is rook f2, and after rook f2 we win in a forced line. We can take on f4 thanks that of the weaknesses on d4 and the weakness on this diagonal. So white takes on d4, we takes on f4, bishop takes f4, and now bishop takes d4 check, and we take the knight on e5, winning a pawn and probably the game. So here we've seen bishop e2 and how to play against it, and now let's go to the main line with bishop b5, and we will see some ideas in this line. We're gonna play knight e4 anyway, the position is gonna be similar, c takes d4, bishop b6, knight c3, castle, and now bishop e3 is the main move. In the full course we will see white castle, that seems normal, is not good, and white bishop e3 is the main move. And we're gonna continue the same plan. We're gonna play bishop g4, putting pressure on f3 and on d4, and white's idea is to play h3, bishop h5, and now queen c2. The idea is that if we take on c3, after b takes c3, white protected the pawn on d4, and they would be more or less happy. And here in this position black has some options, but the one I'm gonna offer is the more concrete and probably the most complicated one. But I think that after all the lines I'm gonna offer in the full course, we're gonna be completely fine, and there is no way white can fight for advantage. In other lines I feel the positions are not so clear, and maybe it's easier for black to play or to remember the lines, but definitely in those positions white can fight for advantage, which I think is not possible after bishop a5 is the move I've played in my game sometimes, and we have a very concrete idea that it is to try to force a draw after the main move, that it is castle, that it is the one that we are going to see. So after castle we're gonna take on f3, g takes f3, and knight takes d4. This is the idea, forcing the bishop to take on d4, and now we have the g5 square for our queen that is gonna be very strong attack on the king side, with the idea of forcing a draw. Of course the attack is not so strong to go for mate, but it's difficult for white to avoid this perpetual check. So bishop takes d4, queen g5, here if king h2, queen f4, so king h1 is the move, and after that we're gonna take on c3 with the idea that we're gonna see next. Here there are two options, b takes c3 or bishop takes c3. We can see here, for example, bishop takes c3, and after that we're gonna play queen f5. This is the idea of the line. We're threatening knight g3 check, winning the queen, and if white takes on e4 we will have a perpetual check with queen takes h3, queen g4, and queen h4. So here we are practically forcing a draw, except there is one move to trying to play for a win, that is rook fc1, that we will analyze it in very big detail in the full course, but we can see an example here of some of the lines. So we're gonna take on h3, king g1, and knight g5, sorry, threatening to take on f3 with check and mate, by the way. So bishop b2 is the only move, and after that here there are some options for black, for example knight takes f3 or queen h4 that have been played, and also they should be enough to make a draw, but I really like the move I'm gonna offer in this line, that is queen h6, that I think is quite dangerous for white. Our idea is to play knight h3, knight f4, and after that we will have very good mate ideas with queen g5. so definitely white needs to be careful too. And here we're gonna see, for example, f4. The other move is bishop d2 that is analyzed in detail in the full course. And after f4, that it is the other idea. We play knight h3, king g2, knight h4. Here we see the idea of f4, that now the king can go to f3. Here after knight g6, the position is very complicated for both sides. We have 3 pawns for the piece, and of course this king on f3 can be attacked very easily, especially when we bring the rook into the action. So let's see how to play with white, that in this case rook h1 is the move, and we're gonna play queen g5, a very strong move, better than queen f4 check. See that now this king doesn't have any squares, so one idea as knight h4 would force white to take, and also we are threatening this pawn at some point. It is not easy to play with white. For example, we can see a move like rook g1 attacking the queen. We play knight h4, white needs to take, and after some move like king g2, trying to put the king safe on f1, we're gonna play rook e8, king rook h1, queen g5, king f1, g6, and we get this position with chances for both sides, but definitely I prefer a black position. We have rook and many pawns for these two bishops. Even a move like rook takes e5, we'll get 4 pawns for the piece, and definitely I think black is playing for a win here. So this is the line I'm gonna offer in the course. As you've seen, it's very complicated, but if you know all the lines that I'm gonna offer, I think you are gonna equalize at least, and probably you can also play for a win if white makes a small mistake. So here we've seen some of the lines in the Italian, and now we can take a look at other options in other lines. Let's start, for example, with the 4-knight variation after knight c3, knight f6. Here in the full course we will see the main lines with d4 and bishop b5. Also bishop c4 transposed into an Italian with knight c3. And here we're gonna see, for example, the move g3 that is not so common, but I like the plan that I'm gonna offer against this move. And we're gonna play with bishop c5. Definitely I think the bishop is better here than in the fianchetto. So after bishop g2, d6, d3, now an important move, we're gonna play a5, avoiding this knight a4 idea, winning the bishop on c5. So we play a5 to give the a7 square for this bishop, and also at some point we can play a4, winning some space. White plays castle, we play castle, and basically here the plan for white, the only plan that makes sense is to put the knight somewhere and try to push f4, but of course in order to do that white needs to move the king, so the only move that makes sense for this plan is to play h3 first, to put the king on h2, and then to try these ideas to play f4 later. So let's see this plan with h3. Wanna play a4, winning some space and threatening a3. After a3 the black squares could be very weak for white, so a3 is practically forced sooner or later. And after that we're just gonna play h6, avoiding some bishop g5 or knight g5 ideas because we want to play with bishop e6. White continues with king h2 and we play bishop e6. Our main idea is to play d5, but we're gonna see that it's not that easy. For example, if against knight d2 that we will see in the course, we will play d5, and here in this 3-minute repertoire course we're gonna see knight h4. Here d5 is not that good because after all the exchanges white would have the 5 square for free, and after that queen g4 would be very strong. So against knight h4 we cannot play d5. Instead we're gonna play knight d4, that is a very strong move. getting control of some important squares. F5, we are also attacking C2, so the queen cannot move, and of course it's a very good square for this knight in the center. White plays the normal move with F4, and after F4 we just win immediately. This is why this move is not possible. We take on F4, takes, knight takes E4, and we take the knight on H4, winning a pawn and practically winning the game. So basically this is the problem for white in this position. Here after knight E4, white cannot play F4, and also any other plan doesn't have so much sense. We have this D5 idea, and black is just better. So here we've seen this G3 system that it's interesting, but after this idea with black, I think we're gonna be perfectly fine. And now we can check the scotch a bit. We're gonna take on D4, knight takes D4, and knight F6. This is the move I'm gonna recommend. It's the most aggressive one, and the one that definitely make us fight for advantage for black. And definitely I think it is worth, even if it is more complicated, it's worth to try to remember the lines in this move, because as I said, we can definitely fight for advantage here with black, and making the best moves, we're gonna equalize at least. So let's check the main line. Knight C3 would transpose to the 4 knights, for example, but let's check knight takes C6. We're gonna take b takes C6. E5 is the main move. In the full course we will see here other secondary moves, as can be queen E2, that it is definitely interesting, or bishop D3. And in the main line after E5, queen E7, queen E2, knight D5, C4. Here there are two alternatives, knight B6 or bishop A6, but I'm gonna recommend bishop A6. I've played these lines many times, and definitely I like them for black. The positions are very complicated, but definitely, as I said just at the start, we can definitely fight for advantage here with black. So in the full course, of course, we will see the main lines with G3, B3, knight D2, all of these lines in full detail. And here we can see an example of queen E4, that usually it's a move that white plays to force the draw. After knight F6, the only move is to go back to E2, and we need to go back to D5. But I'm gonna offer one more choice here after queen E4 if we want to play for a win. That is the move knight B4. That is definitely very interesting. It's also risky, but if white is not very well prepared, maybe we can win the game immediately. The idea is that we are gonna have some D5 at some point, and it's not gonna be easy to play with the white pieces. For example, knight C3. Now we're gonna play Rook D8, a very important move. And here, as I said, the idea is D5, and definitely it's not easy for white to react. For example, A3, D5, black is winning because this queen doesn't have a good square to protect the idea knight C2. If queen E2, bishop takes C4, and if white takes first on D5, then definitely there is no good square for this queen, because after C takes, queen takes B4, we have queen takes E5 check, winning the queen. So this is a very good trick that makes us win the game immediately. And this is why here it's very difficult to play with white, and the only move is the move king D1, that is definitely very, I don't know how to say it, very strange, putting the king in the D file, which a rook is, but the idea is to protect the C2 square, so there is no knight C2 check. And now after this, we're gonna play D5 anyway, but the position is gonna be a bit different, because now white can take on D6, and after rook takes D6, bishop D2, the position is more or less balanced, but we can take a look at the main line for both sides. We're gonna play rook E6, queen F3 is the normal move, and now we're gonna play C5, very important move because A3 is a threat. So we're gonna play C5 to play knight C6, and actually if we get to C6, black is gonna be fine. So the best move is to play queen a8, and after queen d8, here white needs to change queens with an equal endgame that is playable for both sides. Because if white takes on e7, we play rook b6, and practically we win the queen. Knight d5, trying to avoid knight c6, that it is the threat. We just play rook b7, winning the queen and the game. So definitely this is a very interesting try to avoid draw against this queen e4 idea. And as I said, in the full course, you will see all the main lines with a lot of detail in these scores. And now let's go with some main lines after bishop b5. We're gonna play a6, and here before looking at the main line with bishop a4, we can take a look at the exchange variation with bishop takes c6. We takes c6, and here the main move is castle that we will see in the full course. And here we can see an example with knight c3 that is less ambitious for white, because sometimes whites want to play with c3 and d4. So with knight c3, this alternative is not possible. And after knight c3, we're gonna play f6. Usually it's not common to play this move because white bishop on c4 is very strong, or on b5 can go to c4 to this diagonal. But here white doesn't have that bishop, so we can play f6 without worrying about the white squares that are going to be controlled by this bishop. So we can play f6, and basically the whole idea for white is to break in the center. Otherwise we can just control the center with the pawns in the dark square, and as I said, the bishop will control the white squares, and we will have a very good position. So the whole idea is d4, and after it takes d4, knight takes d4, c5, knight e2, takes, bishop d6. We get this endgame that it's actually very common in this line, this kind of endgames. And basically black is perfectly fine. The computer even like black position more, but we need to be a bit careful. We have very good pieces. Our bishop can go to d6, the knight can go e7 and c6. We can play long castle to put the rooks in the center, and definitely we have a very dynamic position controlling all the squares. What we need to be careful in this kind of endgames is that white have this majority in the king side, and if we keep exchanging pieces, then at the end we can have some problems and white can advance this majority. So in order to avoid that, we usually need to play dynamic with these bishops, trying to create some problems here on the queen side, thanks also to this majority, and also thanks to this bishop looking at the queen side. And as I said, not trying to exchange so much pieces, and try to coordinate our bishops with our rooks, also knight and rook, to try to create some problems dynamically. So this is an example of one of the lines in the exchange variation, and we can see the main lines with bishop a4. We're gonna play knight f6, and here before seeing the lines with castle and knight c4, we can see the move d3 a bit. That is a very important line in our repertory, because we want to play against castle knight c4, the open Spanish. So if we play these lines many times in games, probably there will be players that will want to avoid the open Spanish, and they will play d3 here. So I would say we really need to be very well prepared against this move. And here I'm gonna offer the move bishop c5 that I've played many times with good results, and definitely I really like this move even better than b5 here or d6, that of course are also playable. So after bishop c5, main idea is just to play c3, bishop c6. We will check it in the full course. That is very normal move. For example, I play this position against Carlsen in a rapid game. I got a very good position with black against him. And here we're gonna see a bit what happened in the main line with c3. We just played d6. castle, and we just play castle. And basically this position is a bit similar to the lines in the Italian, so this is also why I like this option, because during the course we're gonna see this kind of positions a lot, so probably we're more familiar with the plans and we know how to play in these positions. Usually the plan is similar. We want to play with bishop e7 and then some knight e7 and knight g6 ideas, with the idea of breaking the center at some point. Let's see an example. For example, rook e1, we play bishop a7. Here the normal move is knight e2 or h3 that we will see in the full course. And here let's take a look at bishop g5. That is also a normal idea in these positions. In the Italian we will see with more detail with the bishop on c4. Here with the bishop on e4, I would say it makes less sense, but still let's take a look at this idea. We're gonna play a6, bishop h4, we're gonna play g5. Here we will see the main move bishop g3 and how to play against it in the full course. And we can take a look at this sacrifice that usually is a bit scary, but practically I would say it never works. And here we have a very good answer to solve all our problems immediately. So after h takes g5, bishop takes g5. Here usually the normal move is king g7, and after queen f3, rook h8. That probably is also good, but it is not easy for us to get rid of this pin. But here we have a much better move, that is bishop g4. The queen cannot get to f3, so we don't have to worry about the pin anymore. For example, if queen d2, we can just play king h7 with the idea of rook g8 and rook g6, or king g6 even, and the white is not pressuring on f6. Usually this move, bishop g4, is never working because bishop takes f6, but here we're gonna see that thanks to the bishop on e4, this line is working. After bishop takes d1, bishop takes d8, usually this bishop is not on c4 or not on e4, it's on c4, and white could be winning, but here we will just take the bishop, we win a piece, and we get a winning position. So here we've seen an example of this d3 variation. As I said, in the full course is explained in much more detail, and in my opinion is a very important line if we're going to play the open Spanish. And now let's get in this open Spanish. After castle, knight ac4, d4. Here we will see some secondary moves as rook e1 in the full course. But let's take a look at d4, b5, bishop b3, the normal line. We play d5, giving the pawn back on e5, but blocking this diagonal and blocking the e file thanks to this knight on e4. And after d takes e5, we play bishop e6, and we get the main position of this open Spanish. Here we will see all the main lines in the full course: queen e2, bishop e3, c3, knight bd2, and here we're gonna see just some examples. For example, we can see the move c3. After that, we're gonna play just bishop e7. And here, once again, white has so many moves, especially transposing to other lines, bishop c2, queen e2, knight bd2, bishop e3. And here I'm gonna offer two more moves that are definitely very interesting and worth knowing, that are rook e1 and bishop f4. Let's take a look at both of them. For example, rook e1, we're gonna play just castle, and here we're gonna see the normal move, knight bd2, but first we're gonna see knight d4. That is definitely a dangerous move if we don't know it. The idea, of course, if we take, then after takes, this knight on e4 has problems because f3 is coming. And after knight takes e5, f3, again, it seems that white is almost winning thanks that this knight's on e5. But we have here a very strong move with some complex line that solve all our problems, that it is bishop h4, attacking the rook. And here white has some options that again we will see in full detail in the course, but we can see an example. Here black is perfectly fine. For example, after g3, that seems strong, attacking our bishop, and again these knights are hanging. Now white has many weaknesses on the king side. This king is gonna be very weak, and after c5 the position is complicated, of course, everything is hanging, but actually black is better and we have a very strong attack. The main idea is that when the knight takes on e6, that is the move that we are gonna see, the rook gets into the action, and suddenly the f3 square is gonna be very weak, and we are ready to get it with the knight on e5. And also, if for example g takes f4, queen takes f4, the queen gets into the attack, and practically black is completely winning because we are taking this knight. And again, if white takes on e6, the opening of the f file is very, very bad for white. And if white is on e4, then there are some bishop g4 ideas, c takes d4, and again knight f3 is coming. So actually this position is completely winning for black, and the best try is to take on e6, that we are gonna see in more detail now. We take on e6. Now we can see already all these ideas, taking on f3, so f takes e4 is the best move. And here we have a very strong idea. We're gonna play c4, attacking that bishop and opening this diagonal that can be very important at some point, and also restricting white pieces. The bishop has to go to c2, and all these pieces are not developed, and thanks to that we have a very good compensation for the piece that make us have a better position. Here again we have not an easy move, that is bishop g5. The idea is that that bishop was going to be very strong on e3, protecting f4, f2, and protecting this diagonal. So after we exchange those bishops, we're going to have access to this f2 square, to this diagonal on b6, and also the d2 square. We're going to have more control, as we're going to see now. For example, bishop takes g5 is the normal move. Remember that we also are threatening knight f3 at any moment. So bishop takes g5 is the normal move, and after queen takes g5, it's not easy to play with white. For example, if king g2, knight g4 is very strong, threatening rook f2 or knight e3, practically winning. So knight d2 seems like the normal move, but we have a very strong answer, even better than queen takes d2, that is just taking the piece back. But after queen takes, knight f3, king g2, we take the queen, but after rook a1, it seems that white has very good chances to make a draw. So we have even a better move that take the piece back, that it is rook a8, putting pressure on the d file. And again, there is not an easy move for white. If queen e2, then we can take on d2 in better conditions. So probably the only move is knight f1, moving the knight from the d2 square. And again we have a very strong move, d4. Take a look at this position, and we're a piece down. We have just one pawn for the piece, but this knight is definitely a beast. We can play knight f3 and take the rook anytime. And definitely white pieces are really bad. This bishop on c2 is doing nothing, this knight on f1, and we are ready also to get control of the d file. So let's see an example. C takes d4 since the normal move, knight f3, king g2, and now even better than taking on d4 or on e1, we have the move queen f6, putting more pressure on d4. We're gonna take the rook anyway, and our idea is to enter with the queen on f3 or on f2 at some point. For example, rook e2 is not good because we would take with the knight on d4, and there is no a good move for white. And also when we take on d4, the b2 pawn is gonna be very weak. So definitely a better position for black here, thanks to all of this. Yeah, rook e2, knight takes d4, as I said, and black is perfectly fine. So this is just an example of one of these lines in the open Spanish, this rook e1 and knight d4, that definitely is a dangerous move, but if we know how to play against it, it's not that we're gonna equalize, we're gonna get probably advantage and a very good position, a very dynamic position to play for a win. So now let's take a look at knight b2, that is the other normal move, and now we're gonna play knight c5, that is the main move. And here knight d4 is white's idea. If bishop c2, we would play d4, transpose into a line of the open Spanish, but with an extra tempo in which black is perfectly fine. So bishop c2 is not white's idea, the idea is knight d4. And now we need to be a bit careful. We're gonna take on d4, c takes d4, and now the idea is to play knight d3. It's important that we don't take on b3, because after knight takes b3, knight takes b3, white will have a very good control of the c5 square. So this is usually what we need to avoid in this position in the open Spanish. If we cannot play c5, usually we are in trouble. So definitely we don't want to reach this position. And our move is to play knight d3. We're gonna take on c1, get rid of that dark square bishop, and definitely the break with c5 is gonna be easier if white doesn't have that bishop and they don't have control of this square with the knight. So rook e3, of course we're threatening the rook, so rook e3 is the normal move, and we're gonna take on c1, rook takes c1, and here there are different ways to play, but I like the move a5, the move I'm gonna offer in the course, and the idea is to put some pressure in this this b3 square, attacking the bishop and also avoiding knight b3 idea sometimes. And after winning some space on the queen side, then the break c5 is gonna be easier. So we can take a look at rook ec3. That seems a strong move, putting pressure on c7. But we can play rook c8, just defending the pawn and preparing c5 in better conditions. Knight f3 seems the normal move. And we play a4, bishop c2. Now we need to be careful. We cannot play c5 because after taking on c5, then white would play bishop h7 check and would take on c5, winning a pawn. So we need to be careful with this trick. And also we need to be careful with the idea of queen d3, attacking the pawn on b5 and threatening mate on h7. So we're gonna play g6, practically blocking this bishop. And also remember that we are not worried about the dark squares because we have this bishop and white cannot get control of these squares with our bishop on e7. So we are not worried about that. Practically we have everything, all the pieces in the right squares to play c5 and have a good position. We can see what happens if white tries to avoid this break, for example with bishop d3, attacking b5, and we're gonna play b4, and we're gonna see that actually the rook on c3 doesn't have good squares on the c file. So rook c6 is normal, but we play bishop d7, rook c2 back is the only move to try to avoid c5, because if rook a6 is just c5, and we get what we want. And after rook c2, we have b3, very strong move, and white practically cannot avoid c5, because after takes, rook c3, that is the only move to avoid c5. If white plays rook a2 or rook d2, we play c5, threatening c4, and if white takes, we take with the bishop, and white cannot take on b3 because there will be bishop takes f2 check, and we will take the rook on c1. So practically the only move to avoid c5 is to keep the rook on the c file with rook c3, but we have bishop b4, winning the rook, because after rook takes b3, that is the only try, bishop a4, and thanks to the pin we win the rook and we win material with a better position. So here we've seen a very interesting line with rook e1, knight b2 and knight d4. And now let's see the other interesting move in this position that I mentioned before, that is the move bishop f4. Again, white's idea is to play knight d4 and trying to get rid of our knight on e4 with the move f3. So we need to be careful, and we play knight c5 first, instead of castle, and after knight d4, now we take on d4 and we take on b3. I think we can see the difference with the other line. Now c5 is easier because there is no knight on b3. So this is why in this position we take the knight on b3, we take the bishop on b3 and not in the other line. And here c5 could be possible, but I really like the move I played against my game against Adiban. I played h5, which is putting a small trick. Here in the full course we will see what happens if white plays some rook c1 ideas, in which black is perfectly fine. But after the normal move that it is knight d2, this is a bad move because we got to play c5, and the idea is that now white cannot take on c5, because after d takes c5 we would play g5, and suddenly this bishop doesn't have any squares. After bishop e3 d4 is winning, after bishop g3 h4 is winning. So this is white's idea with h5 that actually made me win a game immediately against Adiban. After any move, I believe he played rook fc1, I just played c4. We have a very good majority here. On the queen side, I have full control thanks to this bishop of the whole board, not just the queen side. Also on the king side I can play, thanks that all white squares are mine with this bishop on f5 or just on e6. There is no way white can get control of any square. If you get the full course, you can see this game analyzed in the model games too. So this h5 is definitely a very interesting idea with this little trick. And now we can take a look at other main line as it is bishop e3, and then we will see also some lines in the with knight bd2 that it is the main line. So after bishop e3 we are going to play bishop e7, white plays c3 is the normal move, we play castle, and now knight bd2. This is one of the main positions of this line with bishop e3, and now black has some alternatives, but I really like the one I'm offering here, that it is queen d7. I think it's a very interesting move if we want to play for a win. There are more solid moves, are bishop g4, in which black tries to defend a slightly worse endgame, but definitely after queen d7, usually we have a very interesting position in which, as I said, we can try to play for a win and yeah, get more like a not like a solid position to defend. So here white has some alternatives that once again we will see in the full course, and we can take a look at the normal move as it is rook e1, trying to put pressure on e4. We're gonna take on d2, queen takes d2, and knight a5. Basically our idea is just to play c5 to get control of d4. If we get control on d4, usually black is perfectly fine. We don't need to worry about anything else because we don't have weaknesses. And also the idea is usually to play knight c4. We need to be careful with taking on b3 sometimes, because after 8 takes, then b4, getting control of c5 and d4, and this is definitely what we want to avoid. So usually the idea is to play c5 and then knight c4, and after bishop takes c4 we take with the b pawn, and we have a very good control of the center and especially of d4. Again, d4 and c5 are definitely the key squares in this kind of positions. In the full course, all these lines are explained in good detail, and we can take a look at one of the moves as it is bishop c2, that is very normal. We play knight c4, attacking the queen, attacking the bishop, and attacking on b2. And white plays queen d3, threatening mate on h7, and after that we play g6. That it stops queen takes a7, of course, but also it allows a very important move, bishop f5, that it's gonna be very useful at some point, just exchanging some pieces. So here white plays bishop h6. That seems a very normal move, but actually it's a small mistake because we can take on b2, attacking the queen, and after queen d2 we have a very strong move that it is rook fb8. That right now maybe it's not easy to explain it, but now in a few moves we are going to understand why this move is much better than putting the rook on e8 or on d8, that of course it was also possible. After bishop takes g6, that it is white's idea, otherwise we would just put the knight back. Bishop takes g6, we need to take f takes g6, we're gonna white takes on b2, and now we're gonna understand why the rook is so important on b8. We play b4 immediately, and now we understand the rook on b8 is gonna get control of the queen side. We're gonna play with doubling rooks on the b file. We're gonna play c5 after exchanging these pawns, and after exchanging these pawns on d4 and c5 are gonna be very strong, and thanks also to the bishop pair, it's gonna be very easy to advance them, and we're gonna get a very easy position to play and a much better position. So here we've seen one example in this bishop e3 line, and now let's take a look at knight bd2. That is the main move. We're gonna play bishop e7, c3, and we play castle, bishop c2, and f5. This is the line I'm gonna offer in the course, and here we're gonna take a look at the main line with knight b3. The other important line I would say is e takes f6, that it's very well analyzed in the full course. And we can also see the move knight d4, that is less dangerous, but it's also important to know because, again, white's idea is to play knight b3 at some point, to play f3, and this knight can suffer on e4. So we're gonna play knight takes d4, c takes d4, and now a move I really like that I actually played against Inner Kiev in a game, that it is the move queen b8. That can seem a bit strange move, but the idea is that white's idea is to play f3, so our idea is gonna be to take and to play c5, and after white takes on c5, then suddenly our queen is attacking e5, and this pawn is very weak. So this is the main idea of queen b8, and also, as we are gonna see, the queen on the queen side can be prepared also to protect and to attack on the queen side, because white's idea sometimes is to play some a4. So let's take a look. For example, if f3, as I said, the idea is to take on c5, so white tries to avoid this with knight b3, threatening f3, and now we're gonna play a5, a very important move, with the idea of play a4 against f3. After that, we will solve all our problems. As if you want to know more about this line in the full course, of course you will have it in more detail. And let's say what happens if white plays a4. That seems normal, but it is actually not a good move. We take on a4, rook takes e4, queen b5. Here we see the queen on the queen side attacking the rook on e4. And after a normal move as rook a1, we can play queen b6, that it's a very smart move, putting pressure on this diagonal, putting pressure on d4, and the idea is once again to get rid of this knight on b3, putting more pressure on d4, and at some point we can also play c5, breaking and putting pressure on f2 thanks to this knight on e4, thanks to this bishop on c5, and thanks to this queen on b6. So definitely a very good position for black here. And let's go to the main line with knight b3 with the idea of knight d4. We play queen d7, protecting these two squares and these two pieces. White plays knight f4 or knight bd4. They usually transpose to the same line because we need to take on d4. Usually I think knight f4 is better because we cannot take on e5 because of f3. Knight bd4 allows a move that I'm not gonna analyze on the course, but that I will just tell you as an idea, this knight d8 that I managed to play in a game that is definitely interesting. But the thing is that after knight f4 we need to transpose and take on d4, so definitely it's not that useful to study that knight d8 idea, because if white put this knight on d4 we need to play the main line. So we have to take on d4, knight takes d4. If c takes d4, we play a5 with the same idea that we just saw. After f3, a4, black is perfectly fine. So the main line is to take with the knight on d4. We play c5, knight takes c6, queen takes c6, f3, knight d5, and here, of course, in the full course, once again we will see all white's ideas in much more detail and many moves that we are not gonna see. But we can see one of the main lines with a4. If king h1, we will just play f4, and this line is much more analyzed in the course. And after a4, we're gonna play rook a d8. We give the a file after a takes b5, a takes b5, but actually we are not very worried about the entrance of the rook here, as we are gonna see, and the rook on d8 protects d5. That is very important for us to have the center protected. So let's take a look at rook a7, that is the normal move. And here we're gonna play g6, protecting f5, that it is also important, blocking this bishop, so we don't have any problems in this on the king side. And here white has some alternatives. For example, if rook b7, we will just play rook b8, and black is perfectly fine. And we can see other two moves as bishop e3 or queen e2. For example, after bishop e3, we can take on e5, because before, of course, we couldn't, because f4 was winning a piece. So after d6, bishop e3, whose idea is to play queen d2, attacking the knight. Now we can take on e5, because f4 is not possible, because we would take on e3. And white's idea is to play rook e1, and definitely putting pressure here with the rook on e1 and the rook on a7. But we're gonna see that after queen d6, everything is defended, and we don't need to worry about this position. White can play queen d2, and we just play knight d6, having everything protected. And practically the only move to try to create some problems is bishop f4. Otherwise, we're just gonna protect the e-file with some rook e8, and definitely we are gonna be just up on up. So bishop f4 is the only try, and after taking on f4, white takes on e7. It may seem a bit scary with the two rooks on the 7th rank, but actually after rook e8 is white who needs to force a draw, practically, because after check, there is no move for white. We are playing rook e1, rook e2, winning the bishop. Also at some point we may go back with the knight on h5 after entering with the rook, avoiding the perpetual check. So here definitely there is no better thing for white than to force a draw. So we don't have any problems against bishop e3, and we can take a look at queen e2. That is one of the main moves, attacking b5 and protecting e5. And now we're gonna play a very beautiful move that I really like, that it is rook d7, getting rid of this rook, and also defending the b5 pawn, because after rook takes d7, queen takes d7, we defend the b5 pawn with the queen. And more important than that, we get the e7 square for this knight. I will repeat it a lot in the full course. This e6 square is perfect for this knight. If we get with the knight here, definitely we're gonna have a very good position. For example, after rook d1, knight e6, black is perfectly fine. We got rid of this rook on a7, we got the knight on e6. We can continue with some c4, queen c6, bishop c5 idea, try to play d4 in the future, and definitely we can try to push in this position for advantage in the middle term. With this, basically, we finish this 3-minute repertoire course. I hope you enjoyed the video, and once again, if you like it, if you've seen some of the lines that you are interested in them, remember that in the full course they are much more analyzed, there are much more lines. This is more like a 10-15% of the whole course, so definitely get it, and I think you will be very happy with it if you enjoy these lines. And if you don't, it's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. I just hope you at least enjoy this course and this free mini course, and you learn things and you improve your chess with it.